Yeah, so in the second part of today's lecture, basically what we are going to talk is the database design with MySQL. So basically we are going to use MySQL to actually implement the database system. So MySQL is this. MySQL is basically the most popular open source relational database management system. So that's why in this course, I'm going to use MySQL as an example to to talk about how to implement the database system. And last time, I asked you to install MySQL community server and MySQL Workbench. So MySQL community server is basically the server system which is going to deal with the data, which is where the data will be saved, and it's where the data will be actually managed. And MySQL Workbench is a client software, so basically you are going to use MySQL Workbench to connect to the server, and whenever you code something, or whenever you give some, whenever you operate something, you are going to do it all in MySQL Workbench. So that's it. So yeah, here was some information about the install MySQL for Windows. So I skip this because everyone is supposed to have a MySQL on your PC right now. So MySQL Workbench, basically, if I give more information, basically it provides a graphical interface for MySQL. So if you don't have a MySQL Workbench, you are still able to use a MySQL server, but you have to use a command prompt, and you have to basically type something. You have to send a command textual request to the SQL server, and in that way you can also still use it. However, if you use MySQL Workbench, it's more efficient and it's much easier to run, and it's much easier to basically operate the server. So that's why we are using it. And using MySQL Workbench, you are able to do data modeling. So basically, in the first part of today's lecture, we talked about how to do relational modeling. And as a result, we have relational model, right? So you can make a relational model in the MySQL Workbench, and then implementation will be done automatically by the MySQL system. And you can also do the server management in the MySQL Workbench, and also for the SQL, which we may talk about that next week. But for you can also run some SQL queries in the MySQL Workbench. So so let's if you have your laptop or PC in front of you, and if the MySQL is installed already, let's open it. So um, let me see. Okay, so basically here, so for me, I already installed it. So I have a MySQL Workbench opened here. So basically, what you need to do is this. Wait for a second. Let me put this here. Okay. Yeah, so I already have a MySQL Workbench installed here. So here I have a MySQL Workbench. So you also have a MySQL Workbench installed on your PC. So if you click, just click that and open it so that we can use it together. So when you open it, you will have this screen showing up here, right? So if you see this screen after opening MySQL Workbench, then simply type yes or type done on the Zoom chat box so that I can check that you are following me. Okay, so you guys are typing yes, so everyone is following correctly. Okay, so also let me test this thing. Can you tell me whether let me see. Yeah. Can you tell me whether you can see the white circle here? If you see white circle, can you type? Okay, so you can see. Okay, so it works correctly. So yeah, so I'm gonna basically briefly explain a little bit about the user interface here. So first of all, if you look at the top area here, there's this dolphin icon, right? So basically, this dolphin icon is about connecting to the server. So it's possible you may have a multiple server in the company or in an organization. So if you click this one, it brings you to the screen of connecting to server. So currently, if this is already selected. So if I click it, I will see this local instance MySQL AD here. So if you see this, basically MySQL is installed correctly on your PC. If you don't see this, there's some problem. So you may have to contact my TA to solve the problem. So if you see local instance with a root account showing up here, then it means that your MySQL is installed correctly on your PC. So everyone see this, right? Okay, so yeah, so some are not able to see this, then it means there are some problems. So in the today it's very difficult to help you from because we are not in the same location. I cannot go there, so it's very difficult to help you. So my best suggestion is contact my TA after today's course. And today's course just focus on what I'm showing to you, and you can also check it later using the slide. All the information will be on the slide, so you can always check it later again. So if you don't see this, contact my TA after today's class or tomorrow. Okay, and the second option here, this one, right? What it looks like, right? It looks like something. It looks like a relational model, right? Which we talked about today. So basically, this second option is data modeling. So in MySQL, I think they call this as a EER diagram, but basically it's where you are able to draw relational model and work on data modeling basically. So that's basically the basic thing. And today, what we are going to do is this. So just to make sure. So can you see this slide on my screen? Is it? Can you read it, or is it impossible to see? I just want to know. Okay, so I think it's fine then. Okay, so everything looks fine. Okay. So basically, today, since in the first part we talked about how to make the relational model, in the second part today we are going to talk about how to implement the relational model. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. And to do that, we have to use this. So to do that, we have to use this EER diagram. So let's click this. Let's use MySQL Workbench and let's click this EER diagram editor. So if you put the mouse cursor on it and click it, then you will see this area. So currently there is nothing, right? So there is one thing here as an example. Probably this is like a sample provided by the MySQL. So that's there, but let's create a new model. So to create new model, simply there are model written here, and next to that there's this plus button, right? So click this plus icon to create a new relational model. So click this plus icon here. Okay, then now you will see this screen here. So currently, there are multiple things here. Okay. So currently there are multiple things here, but basically here there's the name of the database. So you can double click this and you can change the name of database. So when you make a new relational model and when you implement it, it will be saved in a certain database. So you have to make the name for the database. So for now, let's just double click this MyDB. So if you double click it, let me move this. Okay, so let me move this to here. Okay. So if you double click MyDB, then on the bottom you will see there's a new field, new kind of window show up here, and it says name here, right? So you can change the name. Let's change name into test. So it's our first database. So let's say test, and that's it. So once you change the name of your database, then you will see that here the name of MySQL database is changed into test. So that will be the name of your database basically. And the first thing you need to do is this. So when you are designing your relational model, the first thing is making an entity, right? So everything starts with the entity. So here you can click this add table. Then you can create a new table into your relational model. So let's click add table. Oh, oh yeah, sorry. Before that, yeah, we have to do this first. Add the diagram, right? So yeah, don't click add table yet. If you click add table, let me see what happens. Oh yeah, nothing happened. You had to double click. So yeah, so if you use add table option, then basically you are manually adding table into the database. But if you want to add a diagram, then click this add diagram. So on the top, there's add diagram. So let's click that. So click add diagram and double click it. Okay, then you will be brought to this screen now. So this screen basically on the top, okay, so basically on the top, it says a diagram here. So basically it's the place where you are able to do relational modeling. So what you made as a relational model earlier from relational modeling, you can exactly make the same thing here. So if you look at the left sidebar here, this one is a table. So you can click this and you can add a new table here. And here are the relationship you can create between tables later. So let's follow this step. So let's click a table icon and let's click in a canvas to add a new table. So simply click a table icon and add it into a canvas. Just click any empty place. Then new table will be added here like this. So after adding a new table, what you want to do is very simple. So simply right click on a table and select edit table 1. If you select edit table, you can change the details of this table. So click it and you will see this screen on the bottom. So you can change the name of table and you can add a new column. So let's do this. So if you look at this slide here, so I made some sample here. So I made the table name as professor and I added several attributes, right? Several columns, step ID, name, office, email, phone number. And also for data type, I selected the integer for step ID and bar character 45 to the name and other fields, right? Other attributes. So let's make a table exactly the same as this. I will explain more about the data type later, but for now, let's make the table exactly the same as what's shown on the slide. So here, for the table name, first, okay, here, yeah. So here for the table name, I can change into professor. And for the column name, so you can simply double click here under the column name if you want to add a new column. So double click here and I can change into step ID and data type is integer, correct? And if you add a new column, the first column will be set as a primary key automatically. So that's correct. And the second option is NN. It means not null. That means there should be an information stored here. And that's correct, right? Because it's a primary key. So that's fine. So let's double click next column and let's add name and bar character. Let's keep it. And let's add more field here. So let me, okay, so let me add office information and email and then phone number column like this. Okay, so when you edit it, basically when you edit table, you will see that the information on the canvas is also changed, right? So if you look at this table now, it has a professor table name and it has a step ID. and you see this dollar sign, right? Not the dollar sign, the yellow key sign, right? That means this step ID is used as a primary key of this table. And there are 4 attributes: name, office, email, phone number, like this. Okay, so that's basically how you can. So it's very simple, right? So it's basically very simple. So you can, that's how you can create a table in this relational model here. So let me talk about a little bit of the data type. So yeah, so basically data type are these things. So what kind of data should be stored in each column? So here, if you look at this one, basically for every column, basically for every attribute, we have to set the corresponding data type. So what kind of data should be stored in this field? So that's what data type means. So the first one is int. So if you just want to use that field to store like regular number without any decimal point, then you can use integer, which is int. So if you are familiar with the programming language, probably you already know this kind of information, but I just briefly talk about it just in case you don't know about this very well. So int is for integer number, basically number without any decimal point. And if you want to use a number with a decimal point, you can choose double. So here, if you double click, you can change this also into other fields, like there should be double somewhere. Oh yeah, here, there is double. So if you choose double, it means that you are able to store a number with decimal points. So for this, I'll just keep it as the int. And also other data type like a bar character, which we set for other fields. So bar character is basically the textual data. So textual data, but there is a number here, right? 45. That means that you are able to store 45 characters. That's what it means. And if you use a bar character, there is a restriction. I think the maximum number of character you can set is probably 255, something like that. So that's so that kind of data type existed because back then the computer was not that good as now. So the storage was limited and the speed was limited. So to handle, so for the database to handle operation much fast, we set this kind of restriction on the attribute. So if we so basically they try to make sure that each field doesn't take too much data. However, these days it doesn't matter because the storage is very cheap and the processing power is very fast. So there is just a long text data type. So in case if you want to make an attribute to store as long, like a long textual data without any restriction, you can simply choose a long text. Then you can store very long textual information. And also data type is there to store data information. And if you want to store time information, there's a data time data type. So if you want to store time information only without date, then there's also time data type. And another data type you may use frequently is Boolean. So Boolean, you are able to choose either yes or no. So it's a binary data type basically. So sometimes you may need this data type for a field like a VIP, whether he's a VIP or not, something like that. So I think these are some common data types you may use mostly in the real world and also in this course. However, there are also other data types. For that, you may check online source. So if you click it, double click it, then you can see there are a lot of different data types, but you can check that later if you want to study more about database system. Okay. Okay, so let's do this. Let's try to make this table. So we already made the processor table, and let's try to make one more table per min. Okay, so let me put this here, and let's do this together so that we can also try to create relationship later. So again, to add a new table, simply click this place a new table icon, and click any place in Canvas and right click on it and click edit table, and table name I change it into permit, and here I put permit number as primary key, which should be integer because it's a number, and then the lot information. For this I can choose the three character and the space information. So space number, let's say space number, then it should be, okay, then it should be integer like this. Okay, so yeah, so please make another permit table on your MySQL quickly like this. Okay, so let's say that you finished making all the entity into table in the relational model here in MySQL ER diagram editor. Then the next thing you need to do is this, create a relationship, right? So let me put it here and put this here. So next thing you need to do is creating a relationship. So in the MySQL, it's providing multiple type of relationship basically. So there is it's quite complex. There's one-to-one non-identifying relationship. There's one-to-many non-identifying relationship, and there's also one-to-one identifying relationship, and there's one-to-many identifying relationship and many-to-many relationship. And the last one is a relationship using existing columns. So each of this is quite a little bit different actually. So let me talk about this first. So so let me talk about this first. So first of all, there is a non-identifying relationship. Okay, let me check whether there's any question. Okay, nothing. Okay, so some relationships in MySQL is called non-identifying, and some relationship in MySQL are called as identifying relationship. So it's actually this is not, it's not an official definition in the database system, but MySQL just made it. So I think I have to explain it a little bit because you are going to use MySQL. So non-identifying relationship is this. So in the MySQL, when you are designing this relational model, if you create a relationship between two entities using non-identifying relationship, then this option will create a foreign key in a many-sided entity, basically. So if you didn't add a foreign key manually by yourself, when you make a relationship, MySQL will add a foreign key automatically. So that's a non-identifying relationship. So if you use it well, you may save some time, but if you use it wrongly, you have an attribute which you don't want. So you have to be careful a little bit about this. An identifying relationship is this. If you use this option, then foreign key will be added also as a part of a primary key. So basically, let's say that between professor table and permit table, you connect these two tables by one-to-many identifying relationship. Then professor table, which is one-sided table, right? The one-sided table's primary key, which is a step ID, will be added into permit table as foreign key and primary key at the same time. So you will see something like this. So one thing I have to mention, I'll talk about that later. Yeah, so this is also, you have to be careful because when you make a one-to-many relationship, usually you want to add step ID as a foreign key into permit table. But if you use the identifying relationship, it will add step ID as a part of a primary key into permit table. So you have to be careful about this option too. And the next one, many-to-many identifying relationship is quite simple. So let's say that between professor and permit table, there should be many-to-many assignment table. And let's say that you didn't make an assignment table by yourself manually, and you want MySQL to create this assignment table automatically. Then you can use many identifying relationship. So you simply connect the professor table into permit table, and if you use many identifying relationship, it will create this assignment table in the middle automatically using primary key of both sides table. So it can save some time if you want to make many relationship quickly. The last option was this relationship using existing column. So let's say that this non-identifying relationship and the identifying relationship, these are so complex, right? These are too complex, so you don't want to use that. You simply want to make everything manually. So you want to, so if in your relational model, if there is a foreign key, you want to add that attribute by yourself. And if there's main-to-many relationship, you want to create assignment table by yourself. And then after you make everything, you want to connect simply by using existing primary key and foreign key. Then simply you can use this option, relationship using existing column. So you can simply pick foreign key and primary key to make a relationship. So those are some of the options that MySQL is providing. So let's do something. So um, let's try several things here, right? So the best way to understand this concept is by actually trying it. So let's try one by one. So let's just start from this one. Okay. So here, let's say that we want to make a relationship between professor table and the permit table. And it should be one-to-many relationship. Let's say that. So professor can apply many permit. Each permit should belong to one professor. And actually, permit table should have a foreign key, right? But we didn't add a foreign key yet. And we want to MySQL to add a foreign key automatically. Then this is what you can do. So simply, so first of all, let me make some space here. Okay. So actually, let me close this one. Okay. So first of all, here are all the relationship you can use. And the second one here, it is basically one-to-many non-identifying relationship. So if you put your mouse cursor on it, it says place a new one-to-many, n means many. So it says place a new one-to-many non-identifying relationship. So you can click this, and let's do this. So after click this, click professor table. So professor table is selected right now, and then click permit table. Oh, we have to do the other way. Yeah, sorry about this. So it says many to one. So if you made a wrong relationship, then simply click it, click the relationship, and right click on it and delete. Then it will be deleted. So it says something like this. So foreign key column will be deleted together because it's non-identifying. Then click delete, and yeah. So let's do it again. So click this one-to-many non-identifying relationship, and click permit table first, which will be many side, and then click professor table, which will be one side. Then now you have this one-to-many relationship, which is non-identifying. So all the non-identifying relationship in the MySQL will be represented as this dash line. And you will see that there's a new field added automatically in the permit table, right? So professor's staff ID is added here automatically as a foreign key, basically. So if you so if you put your mouse cursor on this relationship, it says which field is connected. So staff ID in the professor table is connected with the staff ID in the permit table, like this. So that's it. That's how you can create a non-identifying relationship. So as you see, if you use this non-identifying relationship, the primary key of one side table will be added as a foreign key into many-sided table automatically. So that's the key concept. And how to know what is primary key and what is the foreign key in your MySQL? It is very simple. So for the primary key, you will see this yellow key icon. That means it's primary key. And for foreign key, you will see this red icon. Then it means this is a foreign key. If the icon is red and also key shape, that means that field is a foreign key, but at the same time, it is a primary key. So for example, let me delete this again. So click this relationship, right click and delete, and click delete. So when you delete your relationship, so connected, if you made it using non-identifying relationship, the connected foreign key will be deleted automatically because that was created automatically. When you delete it, it will be also deleted automatically. So that's one thing. So yeah, so that's the non-identifying relationship. And the next one was the identifying relationship. So here, there's this one. So identifying relationship will be represented as a solid line in the MySQL. So in MySQL here, there's this option here, which says one-to-many. Basically, if you put your mouse cursor on it, it says place a new one-to-many identifying relationship. So let's click this and let's try. So click this one and click permit table and click professor table again. Then now you will see that there's a new attribute added into the permit table. So I think when the MySQL is updated, they changed the icon actually, it looks like. So basically, here, the professor just step ID field is added automatically into the permit table, and it is set as primary key and foreign key. So it looks like when it is set as another primary key, it doesn't show any icon anymore. Yeah. But if you click permit table and right click and edit permit, then you will see that in here, the professor, right? The professor, the step ID. Oh yeah, here you will see this key icon. So you will see that this attribute is also selected as a primary key. So that's what they do. So if you use your identifying relationship to create a relationship in the MySQL, it will add primary key of a one-sided entity as a primary key in another entity like this. Okay, so that's it. So let me delete this relationship. So right-click on the relationship. So click on the relationship and right-click and delete and click delete. Okay. So many-to-many relationship is this. Oops. Okay. So here, this one, place a new many-to-many identifying relationship here, right? So this you can use to create the many-to-many relationship. So let's say that professor and permit table should be many-to-many, but you don't want to make a assignment table by yourself automatically. Then click this one and simply click professor and permit. Then it will create this assignment table automatically. So yeah, if you click this assignment table, it will show that this is connected with the professor entity and the permit entity using the primary key like this. So if you right click on this, if you click edit professor has a permit, then you will see that professor's step ID and permit number are set both as a primary key like this. So that's it. So that's the many-to-many identifying relationship. So earlier I told you about this, right? Relationship using existing column. So let me show you how to do this very quickly. So again, let me click on this many-to-many relationship and right click on it and let me delete professor has a permit table. Okay. So for the last option, relationship using existing column, basically you make everything first and then you simply set relationship. So to do that, I have to add a step ID field into permit table first. So right click on the permit table and click edit permit. And here, Yeah, let's add one more column, which is staff ID. Staff ID should be integer, right? Because it should be connected with the staff ID in the professor table, and it should be the same data type. So if primary key and foreign key are going to be connected, their data type should be the same. So it's integer here. So I set here integer as well. Okay, that's it. So it's added here now. So now let's say that we want to connect this step ID and this step ID together, right? So to do that, simply let me close this. Okay. Simply choose the last option here, which is place a relationship using existing column. So this icon, click this. And once you click this, let me move this here. Okay, so once you click that, you will see this message here, right? It says foreign key column first. So you have to choose foreign key column first. So step ID inside the permit table will be the foreign key, right? This one. So click this first. So once you click it, once you click this, you will see that step ID is added here. So foreign key column, there is a step ID. So if you are done, click pick reference column. Okay. Then now you have to choose a reference column, what it will be connected. So in this case, click this step ID in the professor table. Then that's it. Now the relationship is made like this. So step ID in the permit table is connected with the step ID in the professor table. So that's it. So that's the last option, relationship using existing column. So basically you can use any of these options to create a relationship. So if you practice more by yourself later, you will be more familiarized with this system. At first, it might be a little bit complex because some options add foreign key automatically, some options does not, and some options add primary key automatically, something like that. So it's a little bit complex at first, but later, if you get more familiar with this system, it should be fine. So the next one I'm going to talk about is this, the changing the cardinality. So let me put this here again. Okay. So let's say that we have this cardinality here, right? One, many. But let's say that you don't like this cardinality. You want to change the cardinality. Then there is option. So for usually in terms of implementation in MySQL, they only care about like a maximum cardinality. So minimum cardinality might not be shown as what you want. So if you want to change it, what you need to do is this. Basically, the relationship, double click on the relationship or right click and click edit relationship. Either way is fine. You can right click and choose your edit relationship, or you can simply double click on this relationship. Then you will see this menu on the bottom. Here, you have to go to the foreign key tab. So where is the foreign key tab? It is on the bottom here. So there's this foreign key tab, right? So double click the relationship and you will see this relationship bar. And on the bottom, there's a foreign key tab. So click foreign key tab. And here you can change the relationship. You can make it either as one-to-one or one-to-many. In this case, it's one-to-many. And permit side and the professor side, you can change whether this should be mandatory or not. So if you uncheck this, yeah, it will be 0 here, right? So if you uncheck this, it will change into 0. So you have to simply check or uncheck this box and you have to click canvas again, then you will see the updated diagram. So in this case, let's uncheck here and let's check this one so that we can have a one-to-one on this side and 0 and many on this side, like this. So that's it. So that's how you can change the minimum cardinality. So when you are done, you can simply click X. And that's it. Okay, so that's basically how you can utilize this MySQL Workbench ER diagram feature. So you can make your relational model in this place basically. And before and there are also other like design features. So let me introduce a little bit about that. Uh, Design features do not affect the implementation actually. It's just for designing. So since you are going to mostly work as a group when you are doing assignment, and also for the midterm you are going to work as a group, right? So I think design feature might be important to explain more detailed information. So if you look at, so all the features are here on the left sidebar. So basically all the design features are here on the left sidebar, so you can utilize it. One of the thing here is there's also layer. So if I choose layer, I can add a new layer here like this, and I can click it and right click and edit new layer, and I can change the color into like a blue or something like that. Let me see. Yeah, like this. That's possible. And I can double click here on the, and I can change the name of a layer as a this ER diagram here is for professor apply permit. So I can specify what what kind of event this diagram is representing, something like that. Because in the real world, like when you for assignment, probably you may like work on like a small ER diagram, right? But in the real world, the diagram the company has might be really huge because there are so many business events and they want to record everything that's happening. So they may have a multiple business events and really huge ER diagram. So usually it's a good idea to keep good documentation of what you did and what you made. So making layer and adding some additional information will definitely help. And also you can add other things like place a new text object. So I can add a new text object here. So I can double click and I can say that there are some business rules and I can specify. So first, something like professor may or may not have a permit. And two is uh, more than one permit is professor may have more than one permit, and something like a permit cannot be shared, something like that. Yeah, I can also put some business rules. So after I work on this part, when the next person or other colleague is working, they should have a same understanding as you. So I can document something like this, important things. And also you can like add the image and other things. So there are some there are like 3 design features here. Okay. So that's there. So basically what I want to tell you here is this: good organization and documentation is very important for success of your teamwork and also in the organization. And once you're done, you can save your model by going to the file option here on the top, file menu. And there is a save model. So make sure that you always save model whenever you make progress so that you don't lose your work. So I can click save model and I can simply save the model as something. So I can save it into desktop and save it, say test, something like that. Okay, so I saved it. So saving model is simply saving this your ER diagram. That's all. So your relational model. So your relational model is saved, but we didn't implement yet. So implementation I'm going to talk soon. And also after you make a nice model, if you want to print it out, so under file option, there is like a print option. So you can print it, or you can also export it into image file or PDF file like this. So yeah, for assignment 2, there are 2 questions. First question is doing the relational model. So in assignment 2, the first question is about changing ER diagram into relational model. So for that, it's okay. You may do it in the Lucid chart or here in the MySQL MySQL ER diagram editor. Either way is fine. You can choose. And let me talk about this, the forward engineering. So let's just say that now you implemented your relational model here. So you draw a nice relational model in the MySQL and you want to implement it. Then you can simply ask MySQL to implement the database system based on your relational model. The option is here. So on the top here, there's a database menu. So click that. And under database, there's this option called this one, forward engineer. So forward engineering is basically transforming model into implementation. So click that. Click forward engineer. Then you will see this option here. So here, let's just test something. So currently stored connection, there is nothing selected. If nothing is selected, change it to local instance. So if your MySQL is installed correctly in your computer, you will be able to see this local instance under stored connection. So basically you are choosing the MySQL server, which you will connect and implement your database. So I choose local instance, basically the MySQL server installed on my computer. And don't touch other option, just leave it. And then click next. So click next. So just click next for this one. Okay, so here it says that there are two tables, right? It says that there are two total objects and they are going to be implemented. Yeah, that's correct because we created two tables in our relational model. So everything looks correct. So click next. Okay, then now it will show this SQL query. So we are going to talk about SQL in the next week, but basically what MySQL is doing is that based on what I created as a relational model, they are translating it into SQL query. And MySQL is going to perform this SQL query to implement. So basically, if you, I'm not going to talk about too much about this, but if you look at briefly, so there's a create a table query, right? So professor table will be made and permit table will be made with these attributes and this option like this. So once you are ready, click next. And then it will perform the option. And finally, it says for the engineer, finish it successfully. If you look at this message, then it means that your database is implemented based on what you draw as a relational model. So if you see this option, click close because it's done. Okay, so this step is also on the slide, so you can check it here. Okay, so to confirm whether it is implemented correctly, you may check it on your database server. So to go there, simply click this home icon on the top here. There's a home tab on the top right, top left corner. So click this. And then here, you have to connect it to your database server. So click this Dolphin option. The first one, click Dolphin. And here, your MySQL server here, right? So if it's installed correctly, you will see this. So click this one. And it will connect to your MySQL server. Or if it's your first time to connect to your server, it will ask the password for your root account. Then simply type your password, which you set during the installation. Okay, so now here, I connected to my MySQL server. So basically, I can put any SQL query here and work on it. So let me see. Okay. So the option is here. So if you look at the left sidebar, there are multiple like server management options. So you can check your server status and other things, but skip this. And here in the middle, there's administration and there's a schema, right? Schema is another term we use for database. So if you want to check whether your database is implemented correctly, you can click and select schema. So click schema. Then you will see that there is two databases here. The first one is here. The first one is named as sys, which is a system. So don't touch about this. So system, basically, this system database keeps all the information about the current system of your database server. So don't touch it, just leave it. And the second one is a test database, which we just created, right, by using forward engineering. So if you click this arrow next to the test database, you will see that there is a table. And if you click arrow next to the tables, then you will see that there are two tables, permit table and professor table implemented here. So if you click again the arrow of the permit table, and if you click again the column of the permit table, you will see that there is a permit number, lot, space number, step ID are included as columns inside the permit table. Same for professor table. So if you look at it, there's a step ID, name, office, email, phone number fields added inside professor table. So your database is implemented correctly in this case. So that's how you can check. Okay, so next thing, so let me talk about this. So let's say that we implemented our database system, right? However, for let's say that for the professor entity, for the professor table, I forgot to add one more attribute, which is a department. Then there are two options. You can either manually add it on the MySQL here, or you may go back to your diagram here, EER diagram. So on the top here, there's EER diagram if you didn't close it yet. So you can edit here. So I can right click on the professor table and edit professor. And let's just say that I forgot to add department field. Then I can simply add it here. So add the department field. And that's it. So it's added here. So after that, I save the model. And okay, so I updated the model now. So next thing, what I want to do is this. Now I want to this new update. So my model is updated. So there are changes, right? So I want this change to be reflected in my physical implementation of a database. Then you can use this option. So after updating the model, simply go to this database menu here. Then here, there's this option called here, synchronize model, basically here. So here it says synchronize model. So choose this option. Okay. Then if you already made a database before, it will give you the same information. So I connect to local instance and other things are fine. So click next. And here, you don't need to check it, just click next. Okay, so it says that it connected and it did some things. Okay, click next. Okay, so basically here, what database should be updated? So the test database, right? So it already selected test database and it's already checked. So it's correct. So click next. Okay, and click next. So everything looks correct. So click next. Okay, so now it's telling that professor table may be updated and the permit table may be updated. Okay, that looks correct. Then click next. So now it shows the SQL query again. So if you want to check, you can check it. But in this case, it should be correct. So let me click execute. So if you click execute, this code will be performed in the SQL server to update our implementation. So click execute. and then it's done. So it says synchronization completed successfully. Finish it. So that's it. Then close this one and go back to your local instance MySQL here. And whenever there's change and whenever there's an update, make sure that you click this refresh icon next to the schema here. There's a refresh icon. So click this refresh icon and let's just see whether our update is done correctly. So click this. And now I see that there's a department attribute added inside professor table. So that's how you can update your relational model, and you can synchronize which is going to update your physical implementation. So that's it. Okay, so the last one here I'm going to talk about is the reverse engineering. So earlier I talked about forward engineering, right? Forward engineering is basically when you have a model, you implement your database system using the model. So that's the forward engineering. And the reverse engineering is this. You have a database implemented already, but the database was implemented so long time ago. So you don't know how this database is implemented and what kind of entities exist and what kind of relationship exists. You are not sure about that. So you don't have a model basically. You have a database implemented, but you don't have the model, and you want to know how the model looks like. Then you can use the reverse engineering. So let me show you how this works. So basically, here go to the database again. So click the database menu. And here there's a reverse engineer option. So you will see that there is this here, reverse engineer option under the database menu here. So click this. Okay, so what database server you want to connect to? The local one. Okay, so click next. Okay, it's done correctly. So yeah, select the database you want to do reverse engineer basically. So in this case, I want to know how the test database look like. So check the test database and click next. Okay, so it says it's done successfully and click next. So it says there are two tables. Yeah, that's correct. So click execute. Then it takes some time and it's opening new window and it says operation completed successfully. So click next. And it says there are two tables created in the model. So that's correct. So click finish. Then now in this canvas, you will see that professor table and the permit table are created and they are connected by one-to-many relationship in this case. So basically, what MySQL did is that based on my implementation in my MySQL server, it simply created a relational model for me based on my implementation. So that's the reverse engineering. So you will usually use the reverse engineering when you are working in a like old company. So company had a database system implemented a long time ago, but it was implemented so long time ago, so there is no documentation, and all the people who made that database system doesn't work there anymore. However, the company wants to update it, or company wants to know how this is implemented. Then you will use reverse engineering. So that's there. Okay, the last one. Connected to database also. Yeah, so we already did this, right? So basically, this is all about the model. So let me close this and yeah, let me go to our database. Yeah, so we already talked about this. So basically, in the slide, yeah, so I put the information here again so that you can already refer back to this. So if you want to connect to your database server, you can click the home icon on the top, and you can click the local instance, which is the dolphin icon, and you can click your MySQL connection, which is shown there as a local instance. Then basically it was the basic layout. So on the left top corner, there's a server management options. And after that, but now UI is changed. Now you have to click schema, then it will show list of the database you have in your database server. And then in the middle, there's SQL query window. So you can type SQL there, which we are going to do next week. One thing we didn't cover is this. So let's try to do this. So how to add a table into your table. How to add data into your table. So for this, yeah, it's quite simple. So basically, so choose the table you want to add data for. So let me, yeah. So under test database, we have two tables, permit table and professor table. So let's say that we want to add some data into professor table. Then simply right click on the professor table, and you can click select row. Then it will show the information stored in your table. So this is one option. Then here it will create a query automatically, which is showing information from your table. And here, so basically, yeah, this is the corresponding query, which shows your table. And here is all the data you have in your table. So currently there's nothing, right? So you can just add here if you want. That's also possible. So you can simply double click here and you can add it. So let's say 1111 and name is T and office is CYT and email KKM as CHK and phone number 11111 department DSME, something like that. So you can do that and type enter and you can add manually like this. That's one option. Something like that, yeah. So after typing the data you want to add here, after you are done, if you click apply button on the bottom here, then this will be saved into your table in your database. So if I click apply, it will show that the MySQL will perform this query, which is insert query. Basically, it's going to add the data into your system. And click apply, and it's done. Click finish. Then if I click close this one, and if I right click on the professor table again, and if I click select row again, then it will show that, yeah, these two data are stored in my table. So yeah, I added the data correctly. So there are multiple ways. Another way is this. There's also, yeah, here, let me resize this. Yeah, so here, so I use the result grid, but there's a second option here is a form editor, right? So if I click form editor, I can add it here too. So I can navigate data stored here. And if I click this icon here, add a new row to the record set, then if I click this, I can type new information here. So 3333 and Tom, CYT, Tom SDHK, and phone number something, and DSME, something like that. And then if I click apply, it will be added again, like this. Okay, so that's the like easy way of adding data into your table. Okay, or you can write down your own MySQL SQL code too using the insert into statement. Okay, so that's how you can add data into your table. And the next one I'm going to talk about is the data export option. So when you have your data stored in your, so basically in your database server, when you have multiple tables and you have multiple data stored inside your table, and it's possible you may migrate your database into another server, then you can use this data export option. So you cannot do it right now because we are simply utilizing database server, one database server installed in our computer. So we don't have any other database server, so we cannot do it in there. But if I show you how this actually works, then it's very simple. Basically, um, let me see. On the left sidebar here, currently we chose schema, right? So you can click administration again. And if I click administration, there should be data export option on the left sidebar under management. Yeah, here there's data export option. So I click that. Then I can choose database that I want to copy and migrate into another server. So in the company, if you are like making a backup or if you're copying some database into another server, then you can try it. Let me see. Yeah, okay, actually there are some questions here, so let me check it. So first one, do we need to save the model after the editing or just synchronize is enough? So if you save the model, basically the model will be saved into a file. So your design of the model will be saved. And if you do synchronization, the implementation of your database system will be synchronized. So I would recommend both of them. So you can, I suggest to save the model first, just in case something happens and you have to load the model again. Then if you saved it, it will be easier. So you can save the model first after editing, and then you can do synchronization. Even though you don't save the model, synchronization will still work, but my recommendation is saving the model first. Okay, the second question here is how can test show in the left-hand side of local instance? It's this. So here on the okay, so here on the left sidebar there are two options: administration here in the middle. There's administration and there's schema, right? So administration is about some management feature, and if you click schema, it will show the list of the database you have in your system. So if you click schema, the test database, if you made it correctly, if it is implemented correctly, it will be shown there. Okay, so so let me go back to the data export. So if you go back to administration and if you look at under management, there's data export option. So if you click this, you will see this screen, right? So basically here you can choose the database and the table you want to export. So in this case, if I choose test database and click it, then I can see that there are two tables. So I can choose all the tables or some tables to export or migrate. And then, yeah, and then there are multiple options to export this data. So in this case, since exporting data, migrating data into another server is impossible because we have only one server. If you want to export your data into a single SQL file, that's also possible. So basically, you have multiple tables and all the data are stored in each of these tables. And you want to move it, you want to move what you implemented. And if you want to move all the data to your friend or colleague, right? In that case, you can use this data export option to a file. So that's also possible. So this option will be useful when you work together as a group. So let's say that one student implemented something and stored some data. And the next student will work on top of that and store more data. Then the first student will export his implementation into a file, and the file can be given to the next student. And the next student can use that file to populate the database again. So in this case, so let me show you. So in this case, I chose the test database and I chose both of the tables. Basically, those are what I want to export. And on the bottom, there's this option: export to dump project folder or export to self-contained file. So you can choose the second option, export to self-contained file. So it's also on the slide, so you can already look at the slide too. And then you can name the file where you want to where you want to save this data. So I choose desktop, and for file name I choose test export and click save. Okay, so basically I will export my data into this file test export.sql, and then here choose one more option. So check this box, include create schema. So if you don't check this box, include create schema, only data will be exported. If you check include create schema, the entire implementation will be exported together. So check this, and that's it. So again, choose database you want to export, and choose the tables you want to export, and choose this option, export to self-contained file, and then check include create schema. So when you are done, click start export. Then, yeah, it says export of the file has finished. Then that's done. So let me close this. Yeah, let me close everything and let me show you how this works. Okay. So here, okay. So my file is not showing up here. Okay. So let me connect to my database again. And let me go to schema. And there's this test database we created earlier, right? So let me delete this first to check whether export is done correctly. So right click on the test database, and there's this option called the drop schema. So if you choose drop schema, basically it will delete your database. So let me click this, and let me click drop now, so that I delete my test database right now. Okay, so now it's gone, right? And earlier I did a data export and I made a file which contains all the implementation and the data. So let me bring that. So on the top, there's this option here called OpenSQL, right? So this one, open or SQL script file. So click this icon, which is open or SQL script file in a new query tab. So click that and choose this one, which is I exported earlier, test export.sql file, which I put all the implementation and data into. So choose this file and click open. Then it has multiple SQL statements. Basically, if I briefly check it, then it has this option of create table. So it's making permit table, and it's making professor table, and it has insert into, so it's adding some data into professor table like this. Okay, so after you load that file, if you click this icon here, execute the selected, so don't select anything, make sure that you don't select anything. And then if you click this lightning icon, which say execute the selected portion of the script or everything, if there is no selection. So if you want to run all the script, you have to make sure that there is nothing selected. So nothing selected. And if you click this lightning icon here, then your SQL script will be performed. So it's done, right? So everything is done. And then simply click the refresh icon here. So this one, click. Then I see that there is a test database created now because of this export file. And if I open table, there's a permit and professor table. And if I open professor table, then under columns, there are all the columns here. And if I right click professor table and if I click select row, then I see that data are stored here too. So basically that's what you can do. So you can export your database implementation and the data stored in your database together by using data export. And then the single SQL file will be created, right? So you can share the SQL file with your friend to continue to work on homework and assignment and tests together in the future. Yeah. That's or about database implementation today.